2 weeks after the battle, Ambassador Deho stood before the Galactic Council in their orbital station above the planet SciFiPrime. The chamber was filled with representatives from 100 alien civilizations, all watching the human with expressions ranging from shock to fear to something that might have been respect. He did not wear diplomatic robes. He wore the uniform of Earth's military, granted to him by Admiral Soman herself. On his shoulder was a patch showing Earth surrounded by stars. He stood straight and spoke in a voice that carried across the chamber. 3 months ago, this council sanctioned the bombardment of Earth. You called it correction. You called it necessary. You said humanity needed to learn our place. He activated a holographic display showing the aftermath of the bombardment. Cities in ruins, 2 billion dead, children crying in the rubble. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. We learned our place, Deho continued. Our place is standing on our own feet. Our place is defending ourselves. Our place is in the stars, and no one, not the Velkari, not this council, not anyone, will take that from us. He changed the display to show the battle. Velkari ships exploding, human fighters attacking with desperate courage, civilian vessels sacrificing themselves to protect military carriers. The council watched in silence as Earth's defense played out before them. The Velkari came with 300 warships. They left with 5. We captured their flagship and their commander. We studied their technology. We learned their tactics. And now we know they are not invincible. None of you are invincible. The council chairman, the floating jellyfish creature, spoke with carefully controlled emotion. This is unprecedented. A species so young should not possess such military capability. You threaten the stability of galactic civilization. Deho smiled coldly. We threaten nothing. We defend everything. Earth asks nothing from this council except to be left alone. We will explore the stars. We will build our colonies. We will trade with those who treat us fairly. But we will never again trust our safety to beings who watched genocide and called it policy. He transmitted a data package to every council member. Inside was everything humanity had learned from captured Velkari technology. Ship designs, weapon systems, quantum drive schematics. Information worth trillions on the galactic market. The council members gasped. This is a gift, Deho explained. Proof that Earth wishes peace. But understand, we give this freely because we can defend ourselves. We no longer need your protection. We no longer need your permission. We will be partners in galactic civilization, or we will be alone, but we will never be victims again. He turned and walked out of the chamber without waiting for dismissal. Behind him, the council erupted in argument. Some demanded Earth be punished for their defiance. Others argued for immediate alliance. Many simply sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. On Earth, Captain Hana had been promoted to Admiral. She stood in the rebuilt Sol Orbital Defense Command, looking at holographic displays showing dozens of ships under construction. Engineer Hyunwoo's civilian conversion designs had proven so effective that Earth was building an entire fleet using his principles. Fast, maneuverable ships that could be produced quickly and cheaply. Hana's second-in-command was Nari, the young pilot who had survived the bombardment and become one of humanity's best fighter commanders. Together, they planned Earth's new defense network. Orbital platforms around the moon, hidden bases in the asteroid belt, early warning systems throughout the solar system. Never again would Earth be caught unprepared. How many ships will we have in a year? Hana asked. 200, Nari replied. In 5 years, 1,000. We are building the largest human fleet in history. Hana thought about the cost. The resources diverted from reconstruction. The young people training for war instead of building futures. But she also remembered watching her planet burn from orbit. Helpless to stop it. Good. Let the galaxy see what happens when you force humans to become warriors. In his laboratory, Dr. Minho worked on new technologies derived from captured Velkari equipment. The Sol Protocol had saved Earth, but he was already designing better weapons, more efficient drives, stronger shields. Humanity would never again face an enemy with superior technology. A young scientist named Yuna worked beside him. She had lost her husband in the bombardment, but she had found purpose in making sure Earth could defend itself. Together, they pushed the boundaries of physics, driven by the memory of those who died. The quantum resonance drive is functional, Yuna reported. We can match Velkari faster than light speeds. In 2 years, we might exceed them. Minho nodded. Then we will reach the stars on our own terms. Lieutenant Jiwon stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as the carrier underwent repairs. She had been promoted to commander and given charge of Earth's new carrier battle group. The ships were being built in orbital yards above the moon. 6 carriers, each one larger and more advanced than the indomitable Junho. The young pilot who had sacrificed his fighter survived the battle and became something of a legend. He trained new pilots now, teaching them the tactics that had defeated the Valkyrie. His students called him the Phoenix because he had risen from the ashes of his destroyed fighter. Captain Taeyang had retired after the battle, his career ending in glory. Before he left, he told Jiwon something she would never forget. "We won because we fought like cornered animals. But be careful. Do not let that become who we are. Fight when you must. Protect Earth with everything you have. But remember that we fight so that others do not have to." Admiral Soman stood in her asteroid base command center, now the headquarters of Earth's military operations. The base had grown, carved deeper into the rock, housing thousands of personnel. She reviewed reports from across the solar system. Mining operations providing raw materials, shipyards building new vessels, training facilities teaching young humans to defend their world. She thought about the cost. 20 converted ships lost, 3,000 brave volunteers dead, her husband and son still gone. The price of victory measured in graves. But Earth was free. Humanity would survive. That had to be enough. A communication came from Ambassador Deho. 3 alien civilizations had requested formal diplomatic relations with Earth. 5 others had sent trade proposals. The Valkyrie Empire had sued for peace, offering reparations and technology in exchange for the return of their prisoners. Soman smiled grimly. The galaxy was learning to treat humanity with respect, not because Earth was liked, but because Earth was feared. It was not the relationship she would have chosen, but it was better than extinction. Commander Velcro sat in a prison cell on the asteroid base, watching news broadcasts about Earth's rising power. He had underestimated humanity catastrophically. He had seen a primitive species and assumed weakness. He had not understood that being primitive and being weak were very different things. A guard brought him a message from the Valkyrie Empire. He had been declared a failure and stripped of rank. His family had disowned him. The Empire offered no ransom for his return. He was abandoned, forgotten, a symbol of Valkyrie shame. Velcro watched through his cell window as human ships launched from the base. Dozens of vessels heading to defensive positions throughout the solar system. He realized the terrible truth. The bombardment had not broken humanity. It had forged them into something the galaxy had not seen before, a young species with nothing to lose and everything to prove. 1 year after the battle, Earth held a memorial service for those who died in the bombardment. 2 billion names were carved into a monument built on the ruins of Seoul. Survivors gathered to remember parents, children, friends, and lovers who were gone. Admiral Hana attended in her dress uniform. Standing beside Nari, Dr. Minho placed flowers at the base of the monument, whispering his family's names. Engineer Hyunwoo touched the stone where his mother's name was carved. Lieutenant Jiwon stood with Junho and the other pilots, their heads bowed in silence. Admiral Soman gave a speech that was broadcast across Earth and transmitted to every human ship in space. "We remember those we lost. We honor their memory not with words but with action. They died in an attack meant to break us. Instead, they gave us purpose. Earth will never forget. Earth will never surrender. And Earth will never again trust others to guarantee our survival." She gestured to the sky where human warships could be seen in orbit. The sky no longer belongs to those who would silence us. The sky belongs to humanity. We claim it not with permission but with strength. We will explore. We will grow. We will defend ourselves and any who stand with us. This is our promise to the dead. Your sacrifice was not in vain. As the memorial ended, a fleet of human ships launched from orbit, heading toward deep space. Exploration vessels protected by military escorts. Humanity's first steps toward claiming the galaxy. On every ship, in every station, in every city rebuilt from ruins, humans looked to the stars with new eyes. Eyes that had seen the worst the galaxy could offer and refused to blink. Eyes that no longer wondered if humanity belonged among the stars. They knew they belonged, and they would make sure the galaxy knew it too. Earth had grieved. Earth had fought. Earth had won. The message to the stars was clear and simple. Humanity was here to stay. The fires still burned across what used to be Sol. Captain Hana stood at the cracked window of her orbital station, looking down at Earth through tears she refused to let fall. 72 hours ago, the planet had been whole. Now it looked like someone had taken a hammer to glass. The Velkari ships had come without warning, their weapons turning cities into craters in seconds. 2 billion people died before anyone could understand what was happening. Hana's comm unit buzzed with static and broken voices. Every military channel screamed with panic and confusion. The chain of command was shattered. Most of the generals were dead. The president was dead. Half the world's governments had simply stopped existing when the bombardment hit their capitals. She listened to a young pilot crying for orders that would never come, then switched the channel off. Her hands shook as she gripped the console. The Velkari fleet hung in the distance like dark clouds. Hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They had stopped firing 3 hours ago. Now they just waited. Hana knew what they were waiting for. They wanted Earth to surrender. They wanted humanity to crawl and beg for mercy. She looked at the emergency broadcast playing on every screen across the planet. A Velkari commander, speaking through a translator, demanded complete submission within 1 week. Down on Earth, in an underground facility beneath the ruins of Sol, Dr. Minho worked by emergency lights. His laboratory had survived because it was built deep into the mountain. His family had not been so lucky. His wife, his 2 children, his parents, all gone when the city above turned to ash. He had cried for an hour when the attack ended. Then he stopped crying and started working. The piece of Velkari technology on his table had fallen from a damaged ship during the bombardment. It was part of their quantum drive system, the engine that let them travel faster than light. Minho's hands moved with steady precision as he took it apart, studying each component. His team was dead. The university was destroyed. His entire world had ended, but his mind still worked, and now it worked with terrible focus. He found something interesting in the alien machine. The quantum field generators operated on a frequency that could be disrupted. If you hit them with the right pulse at the right moment, the drive would collapse inward. The ship wouldn't just stop. It would tear itself apart from the inside. Minho sat back in his chair and stared at his discovery. One weapon. That was all he needed to build. One weapon that could turn their own technology against them. On the surface, Lieutenant Jiwon climbed through the wreckage of Busan Naval Base. She was 24 years old and had been an officer for less than a year. The carrier she served on, the Indomitable, was one of 3 human warships still operational. It floated in the Pacific Ocean, damaged but alive, hiding in the shadow of Jeju Island. Her captain had sent her to find survivors and equipment. So far, she had found 17 survivors and 1 working weapons system. A young sailor, barely 18, helped her carry a missile guidance computer through the rubble. His name was Junho, and he talked constantly to keep from thinking about the bodies they passed. Jiwon let him talk. It was better than silence. They reached the boat and loaded their salvage. As they pushed away from shore, Junho asked the question everyone was asking. Are we going to surrender? Jiwon looked at the smoke rising from the city. She thought about running. She thought about hiding. She thought about living on her knees. Then she thought about the children who had died in the first minutes of the attack, before they even knew there was a war. No, she said simply. In Geneva, what remained of the Galactic Council met in emergency session. Ambassador Deho sat in Earth's chair, the only human in a room full of aliens. He had arrived on Earth just 2 days before the attack, returning from his post on the Council station. Now he understood why several alien diplomats had made excuses to leave Earth early that week. They had known. The Council had known. The Velkari ambassador stood and spoke with what might have been pride. His people had delivered a lesson to the aggressive humans. Earth had expanded too fast, claimed too many resources, built too many weapons. The young species needed to learn their place. Other council members nodded in agreement. Some looked uncomfortable, but none objected. Daiho sat very still. He had spent 10 years learning to be diplomatic, to smile and negotiate and find common ground. 10 years of being polite to beings who saw humanity as children playing with fire. Now he understood that politeness was a luxury Earth could no longer afford. He stood and spoke in a calm, clear voice. You sanctioned genocide. The room fell silent. The council chairman, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish, made a gesture of dismissal. It was not genocide, merely correction. Humanity would recover under proper guidance. They would be grateful eventually for the lesson in humility. Daiho gathered his papers. He thought about his brother who had died in Tokyo. He thought about every human who believed the council would protect them. He thought about how stupid they had all been. "We will remember this," he said quietly, and walked out. Back on her orbital station, Captain Hana received a transmission on a military encryption she thought was dead. It was Admiral Salmon, broadcasting from somewhere in the asteroid belt. Her voice was steady and hard as iron. She had orders for every surviving unit. Do not surrender. Do not run. Hide. Prepare. Wait. The transmission included coordinates for emergency rally points and encrypted instructions to begin salvaging everything possible. Weapons, fuel, parts, food, medicine. Anything that could help humanity survive and fight. The Admiral's final words burned into Hana's memory. They think we will die quietly. They think we will accept this. Show them what happens when they make humans angry. Hana looked down at Earth again. The fires still burned, but she could also see lights coming back on in some cities. Emergency services working through the night. Rescue teams digging through rubble. Humanity bleeding but not broken. She thought about her crew. 6 people on a station built for 30. She thought about the orders to prepare, to wait, to strike when the moment came. She opened a channel to her people and began giving orders. They had work to do. The Valkyrie thought the war was over. Hana smiled for the first time in 3 days. It was not a happy smile. The war had just begun. 3 months after the bombardment, Earth looked like a world in mourning. The Valkyrie fleet had withdrawn to the outer system, confident that humanity would surrender when the occupation force arrived. They monitored Earth's communications and saw exactly what they expected: a broken species crying for their dead, struggling to survive. They did not see the truth hidden beneath the grief. In a hollowed-out asteroid beyond Mars, Admiral Salmon commanded what remained of Earth's military from a base that officially did not exist. She was 58 years old, gray-haired, and the highest-ranking officer to survive the bombardment. Her husband had died in the attack. Her son was missing. She had cried for one night, then locked those feelings in a box and focused on the only thing that mattered: keeping humanity alive. The base had been a mining station once. Now it held representatives from every surviving military unit, scientists, engineers, and civilians with skills that could help. Salmon stood before a holographic display showing the solar system. Red markers indicated Valkyrie positions. Blue markers showed human assets, pitifully few compared to the enemy. She pointed to a cluster of civilian ships hiding in the asteroid belt. "These mining vessels, cargo haulers, and colony transports are our new fleet. We convert them into warships." An engineer named Hyunwoo stood and studied the display. He was 32, skinny, with oil stains on his clothes and exhaustion in his eyes. He had been designing civilian spacecraft for 10 years. Now he had to turn them into weapons. "It will take months," he said. "We need to reinforce the hulls, add weapon mounts, upgrade the engines. These ships were never meant for combat." "Then we make them mean it," Salmon replied. "Use whatever materials you can find. Strip dead satellites. Cannibalize damaged stations. I don't care if the ships are pretty. I care if they can fight." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. His mind was already working through the problems. The civilian ships had advantages the Valkyrie would not expect. They were small, maneuverable, and their designs were completely different from military vessels. The enemy's tactical computers would not recognize them as threats until it was too late. On Earth, Dr. Minho worked in his underground laboratory with a new team assembled from survivors. They had taken his quantum drive discovery and turned it into a weapon. The Soul Protocol, they called it. A device that could broadcast a specific pulse designed to collapse Valkyrie quantum drives. One device could affect multiple ships if they were close enough together. The problem was delivery. The Valkyrie ships had shields that would stop conventional missiles. Minho paced his laboratory, thinking. A young physicist named Yuna, who had lost her husband in the bombardment, suggested something radical. They could not shoot the weapon at the Valkyrie, but they could give it to the Valkyrie. "A virus," she explained. "We planted in salvaged Valkyrie technology. When their ships scan the debris looking for intelligence, the virus transfers to their systems. Once it spreads through their fleet network, we activate it remotely." Minho stared at her. It was brilliant and risky. They would need to make the technology attractive enough that the Valkyrie would study it. They would need to hide the virus so deep that alien engineers would not find it. And they would need perfect timing. How long? He asked. 3 months to build it. Another month to plant it where they will find it. Start immediately. Above Earth, Captain Hana trained new pilots in the orbital stations that still functioned. Most of her students were teenagers who had lost their families. They flew with a desperate fury that worried her. Good pilots thought clearly under pressure. These kids flew like they wanted to die, taking enemies with them. One student stood out. A girl named Nari, 17 years old, who had survived the Seoul bombardment by pure luck. She had been visiting her grandmother in the countryside when the city burned. Now she flew with cold precision, never making the same mistake twice. After training one day, Hana asked her to stay behind. "You are good," Hana said. "Maybe the best natural pilot I have seen. But you fly like you have nothing to lose." Nari looked at her with empty eyes. "I don't." "Wrong. You have everything to lose. If you die, the Velkari win. They took your city, your family, your world. Don't give them your life too. Stay alive. Make them regret what they did." Something changed in Nari's expression, a spark of anger replacing the emptiness. She nodded once and left. The next day she flew differently. Still precise, still deadly, but with purpose instead of despair. In Velkari space, Lieutenant Jiwon completed the most dangerous mission of her life. She had volunteered to infiltrate enemy territory in a small stealth ship, planting tracking beacons on Velkari staging areas. For 2 months she had drifted through their systems like a ghost, attaching tiny devices to asteroids, derelict stations, and the outer hulls of enemy ships. Every beacon transmitted on a frequency the Velkari did not monitor. Each one would activate when the time came, giving human forces the exact location of every enemy vessel. G1 had planted 47 beacons. She had also intercepted enemy communications, learning the composition of the occupation fleet. 300 warships. That was what the Velkari were sending to occupy Earth. They expected no resistance. The fleet would arrive in 4 months and take control of the planet, turning humanity into servants of the Velkari Empire. Jiwon recorded everything and began the long journey home. Back at the asteroid base, engineer Hyunwoo showed Admiral Summon the first converted civilian ship. It had been a mining vessel called the Mountain's Heart. Now it bristled with salvaged weapons, reinforced armor plating, and an upgraded engine. It looked like something built from spare parts because that was exactly what it was. But when Hyunwoo ran the combat simulations, the ship performed beyond expectations. "How many can you build like this?" Soman asked. "We have 78 civilian ships in the belt. Give me 4 months and I can convert 60 of them." "You have 3 months. We need them ready before the occupation fleet arrives." Hyunwoo did not argue. He just nodded and went back to work. Dr. Minho completed the Seoul Protocol virus and delivered it to Admiral Soman personally. She held the small data chip in her hand, knowing it contained humanity's best hope. "This will work?" she asked. "If we can get it into their systems, yes. It will spread through their fleet network like fire. When we activate it, every infected ship will tear itself apart. And if they find it before we activate it," Minho met her eyes. "Then we die." Soman put the chip in her pocket. "We die anyway if we do nothing. At least this way, we take them with us." Lieutenant Jiwon's stealth ship limped back to the asteroid base, damaged by a near miss from a Velkari patrol. She transmitted her intelligence to Admiral Soman, including the fleet composition and timeline. 300 warships in 4 months. The numbers were terrifying. Earth's converted civilian fleet would have 60 ships at most. Soman studied the intelligence reports late into the night. 5 to 1 odds. The Velkari had superior technology, better weapons, stronger shields. In a straight fight, humanity would lose in minutes, but this would not be a straight fight. She began drafting a battle plan that used every dirty trick, every surprise, every advantage humanity could create. Captain Hana received orders to prepare her pilots for combat operations. The timeline was accelerating. Engineer Hyunwoo worked 20-hour days converting civilian ships. Dr. Minho distributed the Seoul Protocol virus in pieces of salvaged Velkari technology, placing them where enemy scouts would find them. All across the solar system, humanity prepared in silence. They mourned their dead, but they also sharpened their knives. The Velkari watched Earth's communications and saw only despair and confusion. They did not see the weapons being built in the shadows. They did not see the trap being set. Ambassador Daeho played his part perfectly, sending messages to the Galactic Council accepting Earth's fate, requesting only that the occupation be peaceful. Behind his words, he fed them false intelligence about Earth's military capabilities, painting humanity as even weaker than they appeared. The Velkari believed every word. Why would they not? They had won. Earth was broken. All that remained was claiming their prize. The Velkari occupation fleet entered the solar system with the confidence of conquerors. 300 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight. Commander Velkra stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Infinite Victory, and looked at the blue planet ahead. Earth. Such a small world to cause so much trouble. He had commanded the bombardment 3 months ago. He had watched cities burn and listened to human radio broadcasts begging for mercy. Now he returned to claim what the Velkari Empire had won. His orders were simple. Occupy Earth, disarm the remaining military forces, and begin converting human industry to serve Velkari interests. Resistance was not expected. The bombardment had broken their spirit. Velkra opened a channel to every human communication frequency. His words transmitted across Earth to every surviving radio, television, and computer screen. Through translators, he delivered the terms of surrender. Humanity would disarm completely. All weapons, all warships, all military technology would be surrendered. Earth's governments would dissolve. The Velkari Empire would govern the planet directly. Humans would work, obey, and learn their proper place in the galaxy. He gave them 3 days to comply. 3 days to prepare the surrender ceremony. It was generous, he thought, more than they deserved. On Earth, Ambassador Deho received the transmission in the temporary government building in Geneva. Around him, the surviving leaders of Earth's nations sat in silence. Some looked defeated, others looked angry. Deho stood and addressed them with a voice that carried across the chamber. We accept these terms. Gasps filled the room. Several delegates shouted in protest. Deho raised his hand for silence. We accept these terms, he repeated, and request 3 days to prepare our surrender ceremony properly. We will broadcast our acceptance on all channels so the Velkari can hear our compliance. He looked around the room at the confused and angry faces. Then he allowed himself the smallest smile. And while they listened to our acceptance, our fleet moves into position. Understanding dawned. This was theater. Deho was buying time with words, the same way he had been buying time with the Galactic Council for months. The delegates nodded slowly. Some managed to smile. The vote was unanimous. Deho broadcast Earth's acceptance of surrender terms on every frequency. His voice was defeated, humble, begging for mercy. The Velkari fleet listened and relaxed. Everything was proceeding as expected. In the asteroid belt, Admiral Somin gave orders to 60 converted civilian ships. They had trained in secret for months, hiding among the rocks and ice, running silent to avoid detection. Each ship had a crew drawn from survivors, miners, commercial pilots, naval officers, and civilians who learned to fight because there was no other choice. The ships began moving. They did not use their main engines, which would show up on Velkari sensors. Instead, they drifted on minimal thrusters, hiding in debris fields behind asteroids in the shadows of dead satellites. It took them 2 days to reach their positions, forming a loose sphere around the Velkari fleet. The enemy sensors saw nothing but space junk and abandoned equipment. Captain Hana's orbital station appeared abandoned. Half the lights were out. No communications. No active sensors. The Velkari scanned it briefly and dismissed it as another casualty of the bombardment. They did not see the 12 pilots sleeping in their fighter craft ready to launch. They did not see the weapons powered down but fully loaded. They did not see Hana watching their fleet through passive sensors, counting their ships, marking their positions. On Earth, in his underground laboratory, Dr. Minho monitored the Sol protocol virus. It had spread exactly as planned. The Velkari had found the salvage technology exactly where he left it. Their engineers had studied it, connected it to their systems, and the virus had slipped into their fleet network like smoke through cracks. Now it waited in the quantum drives of 237 Velkari ships, invisible and patient. Minho looked at the activation switch on his console. One press and those drives would collapse. 237 ships would tear themselves apart. He had built a weapon of genocide, and the weight of it sat heavy on his shoulders. His hand hovered over the switch, but he did not press it. Not yet. Timing was everything. Lieutenant Jiwan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, one of Earth's 3 surviving military warships. The carrier had spent months hiding in the Pacific, pretending to be crippled. Its engines were repaired. Its weapons were loaded. Its fighters were ready. Captain Taiyang, a veteran of 30 years, stood beside her and watched the tactical display. 300 enemy ships, he said quietly. We have 60 civilian conversions, 3 military vessels, and whatever orbital defenses still function. This is suicide. Yes, sir, Jiwan replied. But we take them with us. Taiyang smiled grimly. Good enough. The young pilot Junho sat in his fighter cockpit aboard one of the converted ships. His hands shook slightly as he ran through pre-flight checks. Around him, 40 other fighters waited in the darkness of the cargo bay. Most of the pilots were his age or younger. Most had lost everything in the bombardment. They talked on the private channels trying to sound brave. Junho stayed quiet and thought about the city he grew up in, now a crater. Nari, the pilot Hana had trained, flew a fighter launched from an orbital station. She drifted in space with her engines off, surrounded by debris. Her ship looked like wreckage to enemy sensors. She counted down the hours until the signal came. Around Earth, 100 other pilots waited in similar positions, invisible, patient, angry. Commander Velcro walked through his flagship, inspecting the crew. Everything was ready for the occupation. Landing forces stood prepared. Administrative units carried documents establishing Velkari law on Earth. Engineering teams had equipment to begin converting human factories. In 3 days, Earth would belong to the Empire, and Velcro would be remembered as the commander who claimed an entire world without firing a shot. He returned to his bridge and looked at the tactical display. His fleet surrounded Earth in a standard occupation formation. Overwhelming force positioned to destroy any resistance immediately. Not that he expected resistance. The humans were broken. Their surrender broadcast played constantly, pleading for mercy. Velcro checked the time. 2 more days until the surrender ceremony. Then his career would reach new heights. He allowed himself to feel proud. Ambassador Deho sent a final message to Admiral Soman. They believe every word. The trap is set. Soman looked at her tactical display. 60 converted ships hidden in the debris. 3 military vessels pretending to be crippled. Orbital stations appearing abandoned. Fighters drifting like wreckage. And 237 Velkari ships infected with a virus they did not know existed. She opened a channel to every human vessel, every station, every fighter. She opened a channel to Dr. Minho in his laboratory. She opened a channel to Captain Hana, Lieutenant Jiwon, Engineer Hyunwoo, and every man, woman, and child who had spent 3 months preparing for this moment. All units, this is Admiral Soman. In 6 hours, the Velkari will learn what happens when you attack humanity. They came to our home. They killed our families. They thought we would surrender quietly. Let us show them how wrong they were. She paused, looking at the tactical display one final time. For Earth. For those we lost. Make them remember us. All units prepare for combat operations. Execute on my mark. Across the solar system, 60 ships powered up their engines. Hundreds of fighters activated their systems. Orbital stations came alive with targeting computers. And in his laboratory, Dr. Minho placed his finger on the activation switch for the Sol protocol. Captain Hana watched the countdown timer reach 0. She opened the channel to her pilots. Launch all fighters. Weapons free. Show them how loudly humans can scream. The sky belonged to the Velkari. In 6 hours, they would learn that the sky had new owners. The trap was sprung. The battle for Earth's freedom was about to begin, and Commander Velcro, standing on his bridge, had no idea that everything he believed was a lie. The Sol protocol activated at exactly midnight Greenwich Mean Time. Dr. Minho pressed the switch and watched his screen as the signal transmitted to every infected Velkari ship. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the quantum drives began to collapse. Commander Velcro was drinking something similar to coffee when his flagship shuddered. Alarms screamed across every console. His chief engineer shouted warnings about cascade failures in the quantum drive. Velcro ran to the tactical display and watched in horror as 30 of his capital ships simply exploded from the inside out. No warning. No enemy fire, just sudden catastrophic destruction. What is happening? He screamed. His tactical officer had no answer. All across the Velkari fleet, ships reported the same problem. Quantum drives were failing, tearing vessels apart. 237 ships either exploded or went completely dead in space. powerless and drifting. In 3 minutes, the Valkyrie fleet lost 2/3 of its strength. That was when Admiral Soman's converted civilian ships emerged from hiding. The Mountain's Heart, the first converted mining vessel, fired its weapons at a Valkyrie destroyer. The enemy shields blocked the first shots, but engineer Hyunwoo had designed these ships to be unpredictable. The mining laser, never meant for combat, cut through the destroyer's hull like butter. The Valkyrie ship split in half. 60 civilian ships attacked from every direction, emerging from debris fields and asteroid shadows. The Valkyrie tactical computers could not identify them as military vessels. Their designs made no sense. Their weapons were improvised and chaotic, but they were effective. Junho launched his fighter from a converted cargo hauler along with 40 others. They screamed toward the nearest Valkyrie cruiser, dodging defensive fire. Junho had trained for this moment every day since the bombardment. His hands were steady now. His fear had burned away, leaving only cold purpose. He targeted the cruiser's shield generator and fired. His missile struck true and the shield flickered. 40 other fighters followed him through the gap, their weapons tearing into the exposed hull. The cruiser listed and began to drift, its engines dead. First kill confirmed, Junho reported, his voice calm. Moving to next target, Captain Hana's orbital station came alive like a awakening dragon. Every weapon system activated simultaneously. Missiles launched in waves. Point defense cannons tracked and fired. The station had been designed to defend against asteroids and small threats. Now it poured destruction into the Valkyrie fleet with furious intensity. Hana stood at her command console, directing her 12 fighters as they launched. Nari led the formation, her fighter cutting through space with deadly precision. The young pilot who had flown with nothing to lose now flew with everything to gain. She targeted Valkyrie communications arrays, sensors, command ships. Every shot counted. Station actual to all fighters, Hana transmitted. Focus on their coordination ships. Make them blind and deaf. The fighters obeyed, swarming the vessels that controlled Valkyrie fleet operations. Without coordination, the enemy formation began to fall apart. Lieutenant Jiwon's tracking beacons activated, revealing the exact position of every Valkyrie ship. The converted civilian vessels used this information to devastating effect. They appeared behind enemy ships, attacked from unexpected angles, and vanished back into debris fields. The Valkyrie had never fought an enemy that used such chaotic tactics. On the Indomitable, Captain Taiyang ordered his carrier to full attack. The ship that had pretended to be crippled for 3 months proved very much alive. Its engines burned bright as it charged toward the Valkyrie formation. Every missile tube launched simultaneously. Every cannon fired. The carrier's fighters, piloted by experienced naval aviators, tore into the enemy with professional brutality. Jiwon commanded the fighter wing, her voice steady on the combat channel. Alpha Wing hit their left flank. Bravo Wing, follow me to their command cluster. Charlie Wing, protect the Indomitable. Move, move, move! The battle spread across the entire volume of space around Earth. Valkyrie ships tried to organize a defense, but the Sol Protocol had crippled their strongest vessels. Their fleet coordination was collapsing, and the humans kept attacking from every direction, using tactics no civilized military would employ. Commander Velcro watched his fleet being torn apart and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. These were the defeated humans? These were the broken survivors who had begged for mercy? His remaining ships outnumbered the human forces, but numbers meant nothing when his vessels could not coordinate their defense. All ships, focus fire on the largest human vessel, he ordered. Destroy their carrier. 20 Valkyrie warships turned their weapons on the Indomitable. The carrier's shields flared under the assault, buckling under concentrated fire. Captain Taeyang knew his ship could not survive for long. All fighters return to base, he ordered. We are withdrawing. Negative, sir, Jiwon replied. We can still fight. That is an order, Lieutenant. Get our people out. But before the fighters could return, Engineer Hyunwoo's voice came over the command channel from his converted vessel. Indomitable, this is Mountain's Heart. We are moving to shield you. All civilian ships form a defensive screen. 30 converted civilian vessels positioned themselves between the carrier and the Valkyrie fleet. They were mining ships and cargo haulers never meant for combat. Their shields were weak. Their armor was improvised, but they held the line. The Valkyrie poured fire into the civilian ships. The first vessel, a former ore hauler called the Steady Hand, exploded after 10 seconds. The second, a transport named the Quick Journey, lasted 15 seconds. One by one, the civilian ships died protecting the military carrier, but they bought time. Time for the Indomitable to maneuver behind an orbital platform. Time for repair crews to restore the shields. Time for fighters to reload and refuel. The civilian ships had been crewed by volunteers, miners and merchants who learned to fight because their world needed them. They died knowing their sacrifice mattered. Admiral Soman watched the battle from her asteroid base, her hands gripping the console until her knuckles turned white. She was losing ships, losing people, but she was also winning. The Valkyrie fleet was shattered. Their coordination was gone. Their formation had collapsed into chaos. All units, press the attack, she ordered. Do not give them time to recover. Dr. Minho activated the second phase of the Soul Protocol. Every infected ship that had been disabled but not destroyed received a new signal. Their quantum drives attempted to restart, but the virus forced them to overload. 30 more vessels exploded simultaneously. On his flagship, Commander Velcro made a decision. He had lost. The humans had somehow turned his own technology against him. His fleet was crippled. He needed to call for reinforcements from the Valkyrie Empire. Communications, send a distress signal to... Communications are jammed, sir, his officer reported. All frequencies. We cannot transmit beyond the solar system. Nari had led her fighter group on that specific mission. They dropped jamming satellites in a sphere around the Valkyrie fleet, cutting off all long-range communications. The enemy was isolated, alone, surrounded by an enemy they had underestimated. Velcro looked at his tactical display. He had entered the system with 300 ships. Now he had less than 60 functional vessels, and those were being hunted by humans who fought like cornered animals. No, not cornered animals. Cornered animals were desperate and sloppy. These humans fought with cold calculation and savage efficiency. Lieutenant Jiwan led a boarding assault on a disabled Valkyrie command ship. Her team of volunteers wearing salvaged armor and carrying improvised weapons breached the hull and fought their way to the bridge. The Valkyrie crew fought back, but they were not soldiers. They were occupation forces expecting to govern a defeated population. They were not ready for humans who had learned to kill with their bare hands if necessary. Jiwan found the ship's commander cowering in his ready room. She took him prisoner and secured the ship's computer core, intelligence that would help humanity understand Valkyrie technology and military organization. She called for transport and moved to the next target. Junho's fighter took a hit from a Valkyrie point defense system. His left engine died and his canopy cracked. He could have retreated to the Indomitable. Instead, he aimed his dying fighter at a Valkyrie cruiser's bridge and ejected at the last second. His fighter struck true, killing the enemy command crew and sending the ship into uncontrolled spin. Captain Hana's station had taken damage, but every weapon still fired. She directed her platform's fire onto the Valkyrie flagship, pouring destruction into its shields. The Infinite Victory shuddered under the assault, its defenses failing. Commander Velcro made his final decision. He ordered his remaining ships to retreat. Full reverse, maximum speed, heading for the outer system. Perhaps they could escape, call for reinforcements, return with a larger force. But Admiral Salmon had anticipated this. The converted civilian ships had mined the retreat routes. As the Valkyrie fleet tried to flee, they ran into a field of improvised explosives. Nuclear warheads stripped from old missiles and hidden in the debris. The mines detonated in a chain reaction, destroying 12 more Valkyrie ships.